All right, welcome back into the podcast. Today we have Coach Walz. I probably said your name wrong too. He is the OC at Ankeny High School. I think I got it right.
Got it.
Coach, thanks for being here.
Hey, it's great to be here, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, if people don't know, he's the second part of Run the Power podcast that's been on vacation, but that's probably where people know you from is Run the Power. It's got to be one of the biggest football podcasts, right? Still, I think.
Obviously, the numbers have tailed off a bit. Coach Harper and myself have both gotten kind of busy. He being a lot more busy than me. He's got the two kids they're growing up fast, and then he's offensive coordinator at McKinney. So I think kind of once he was diving into that world, pretty high stakes football in Texas, it was one of those things where we really couldn't keep it going.
Mm-hmm.
And then even if I think we kind of, all right, maybe we'll do a few of these and keep it rolling, then we had a change here at Ankeny. And I got the offensive coordinator job. And usually when I'm coordinating, I'm pretty highly involved in that. I watch a lot of film and
Mm-hmm.
grind pretty hard that, it became difficult, I think, for both of us to find time to do these. I know, there's still several people that listen to them and ask us about episodes and ask us questions and message us all the time. So, I mean, it has a residual effect. There's no doubt about it. The connections that Coach Harper and I have made, this being another one now, in that social media world and the podcast world have played ridiculous dividends for us, between, I don't know, getting film, being able to go places and visit. And then, not only that, people, asking us about, potential coaching positions and do you know somebody here? Do you know somebody there?
Mm-hmm.
It's just an unbelievable network of people that we've been able to meet. So, I hope there's still people out there listening to it. And who knows, maybe we'll dust it off and get back into it here in a bit too.
Oh yeah, I find it sometimes, especially if I'm talking to a coach that I know you guys have had on. Sometimes I listen to it to get the like prepare myself too. So I think
Mm-hmm.
some of us that started podcast after you guys, that's what helps too, is you're like researching that coach. Like I think it was Coach Holler was one of them. I listened to it, got to talk to him, and I was like had an idea of what I was going to talk about because I just do this by the seat of my pants. Like I used to write it down like the questions, but I was like, screw it. We're gonna go by the seat of our pants. And so sometimes that's where your guys' comes in. And of course,
That's
I'm an O-line coach. So when it says power, I have to watch it, right? Or listen.
dang right. I mean, that was always kind of the premise for us too. Bring people on who we wanted to learn from, but usually it was always going to kind of come back to we wanted to bring, offensive line, run game, pass protection, things like that, obviously. And of course, gap scheme, I don't think there's an offensive line coach out there that doesn't like gap scheme. And if they don't, they probably don't admit it to any other offensive line coaches. But yeah, hey, Coach Holler, it was always kind of funny that was the first football podcast that he ever did.
Okay.
And we'd obviously read his articles and he wanted to bash on the some of the old school coaches and the
Mm-hmm.
conditioning and things like that. So it was fun to bring him on, but he'll still tell you to this day, yeah, Run the Power. That was the first football podcast he did, and it kind of, I would say he'd obviously been introduced in the football world, but maybe brought him maybe a little bit more mainstream, and now he's a huge celebrity. We're just lucky to know old Coach Holler. He's a stud.
Oh yeah, he lives like he told me where he lived. He lives like 15 minutes away from me, which is crazy. He lives right down the street, like
Mm-hmm.
15 minutes. He coaches at a high school that at a school that I coached at, played basketball against. And so they all adopted that Feed the Cats. And we always wondered, why is the team so fast? And then I was like, well, because of this guy that's in the building. This is why they're fast, because they have adopted it. And then, like you said, he's a celebrity now. He's all over the place. He does the Glacier clinics for football, and he's out there.
Mm-hmm.
That was the same thing. He explained everything. I learned it a while back, and I'm like, none of this makes sense because I had the old school thinking. Like, what do you mean you're not hitting all the time? And what do you mean you're not doing gassers or running or doing these things? And my buddy was doing it, another buddy was doing it. And then none of it made sense. Then finally it clicked, talked to Coach Holler, and then it clicked even more. And I'm like, this makes a lot of sense, what you're saying. And now the old schoolness is like leaving my body now. I'm like, because I did in football this year, like my lineman, this was the least amount of hitting I've ever done. And I was like cringing, but we stayed healthy all year for once. So I was like, maybe there's something to his way of doing it.
Yeah, it really resonated with us. I know we did the podcast, and then um obviously you'd be able to exchange numbers, and you're able to kind of bounce ideas off of him. And then I was coaching track at the time, and our head track coach Nick Nelson had adopted a lot of the philosophies that track season, and since then, I mean, Ankeny has really taken off. I mean, you could ask anyone again. It's a combination of factors, but we needed to go to that because we had a class coming through. They played so many sports,
Right.
so it was almost impossible. I mean, if we were going to have to share athletes, and guys are playing three sports, especially in our league, the CIML league in Iowa. I mean, everyone will tell you. I mean, it's a meat grinder. There's
Right.
eight teams, and all of them are going to be good. I think this year when they did have the final eight teams in the football playoffs, six of them are in the CIML. So I mean, it's just a hotbed for talent in football. But it was something we had to do out of necessity. Otherwise, our best guys were going to be hurt.
Uh-huh.
They weren't going to be able to go out. They had other primary sports. We had D1 wrestlers, we had D1 baseball players, and we needed those guys to play football. So I think switching over to that, and then we've just been able to kind of tweak it and modify it throughout. But the overall premise has always been the same. We want our kids to be fast and fresh. We want our kids to be playing the best on whether it's a Friday night or hey, Friday nights in November when the playoffs do hit. And we've now got 4 or 5 years of data that all back it up. We still have kids getting faster during the season.
Mhm.
We've taken our track program. We were barely scoring at the state meets when I was there. I mean, we still had some good kids and things like that, but now we get a third place. Last year we were second place, and I think we're going to have as good a shot as anybody at winning the state track meet this year because we've built our track program on sprinters. We've
Right.
got more sprinters and more speed than we ever have, and all of a sudden now that stuff shows up. Hey, your defense is faster, your special teams are faster. You have younger athletes who are able to contribute earlier because they can run and they can play at that level. I just feel like there's so many positives to it, and at the same time, our kids are happy and healthy. We don't ever condition. We haven't conditioned in 5 years,
Mhm.
and everybody will tell you. My wife, she doesn't know the most about football, but she's always telling me, "You guys are a second half team. You're always a second half team." And I think a lot of that has to do with that mentality of, "Hey, we're going to be fresh. We're going to
Right.
be, explosive in the fourth quarter," and that's helped us win a lot of games late because we've adopted this and we don't grind our guys down. What a
Right.
what a novel concept, right?
Oh, I know, because like I said, my buddy did it years ago, and I remember him saying, like, Steve, if you watch he coached girls track, he goes, if you watch it, you'll think we're the laziest people you've ever met.
Mhm.
And I'm like, what do you mean? We run and then we sit for 5 minutes and we do nothing for 5 minutes. Then we get up and run again and do whatever. And he goes, my practices are cut in half. I don't have to be out there all day. And it never clicked with me. I talked to Coach Dixon during COVID, and he explained things to me. Some of it clicked, some of it didn't. It just couldn't wrap my mind around. Like, what do you mean you don't put pads on till Wednesday? What do you mean you're only running 10 plays of defense? Like, none of this is resonating with me. It doesn't feel right. And then when I talked to Coach Holler, he just said, you're going to be uncomfortable when you decide to make that switch of like,
Mhm.
just think about it. Like, what do up downs do for you? Like, when you play, did they do anything for you? And I was like, well, it makes you in shape. He goes, no, it doesn't. And all of a sudden, it just clicked. So when I went to my head coach, he played linebacker at North Central. And so he has that linebacker mentality. And so I explained it to him. He goes, nope, nope. And then as we went on, he's like, all right, some of this makes sense because like we don't two platoon. We have to practice offense and defense in one day. So I
Yep.
had to look at what the D line was doing because my O line, we're going to go practice D line later on in the day. Are you hitting a lot today? And he might be like, oh, yeah, we're doing whatever. And I said, okay, an individual, I'm not hitting today then. What do you mean you're not hitting? I was like, we're going to hit bags. Well,
Mhm.
why? And I said, because think about it, coach. We're individual. If I have them hit one on one, whatever it is, do inside run, do team offense, turn around and go do defensive line stuff that's hitting, maybe play some scout team too and hit. They're going to get worn out by Friday. So I'm going to scale it back. And my old line, I remember week 2 or 3, they were like, Coach, we feel fresh still. And I'm like, okay, maybe there is something to this where you're bottled up and you want to go hit people on Friday night instead of me killing you all week. It's crazy.
Yeah, at the end of the day, you want your kids. I mean, yes, we have to have them prepared, but there's really no substitute for them feeling really, really good on Friday.
Right.
They're gonna play way better on Friday as opposed to, hey, you know, man, I feel really good. We had 20 reps of inside run and we hammered them. I mean, you might feel good as a coach, but the kids, if they're not going to be able to play full speed on a Friday night, it's literally going to be a counterproductive thing. And then you talk about obviously late in the season, all those things accumulate. You've only got
Right.
so many hits in your shoulders.
Right.
You know, we're having to deal with that a little bit. I think, you know, we've had some kids with some labrums and things like that. So I know we're even looking to modify things a little bit, how we want to even practice with some of our bigger athletes. So it's a constant battle. But I know this, on Friday nights, we usually have our best dudes out there. And when you
Right.
put your best dudes on the field, you're always going to have a chance.
Right. Yeah. Because we made the playoffs for the first time since 2014, and we started to think like, well, how did this happen? And obviously, it's the kids that finally bought in, but we realized there was less injuries. There was a couple
Mhm.
teams that had more players than us, but we just kind of wore them down. Like even though they had more players, they just kept their best guys on the field, and we just kind of wore them down a little bit. And we were like, okay, maybe there is something to what we were changing a little bit. So I know maybe this year we're going to even go even more further into what Coach Holler does, because the head coach was like, maybe Steve, maybe there is something that you were trying to bring here when you were talking to him. So, and I'm like, and guess what, coach? We live in the suburbs. He's in the suburbs. We can go grab him. Other people don't have that opportunity. We could ask him to take 10 minutes to talk to us, like it's not that hard. And so we'll see, but it is a crazy concept from when we all played. Like it's still uncomfortable to me to be like, I want to do one-on-ones, or I want to do this, I want to do this. And I'm like, Steve, old schoolness, like we don't need to do it no more. Like the running for punishment, even I don't even do that anymore. I'm like, but it's uncomfortable still. And I think it'll forever be uncomfortable, but you know, we always have to think about when we did it and how did we like it? We hated it. I hated it. That's why I
Yeah,
hate running to this day. I don't want to go run because it was punishment all the time. All the time.
yeah. I just think, yeah, I mean, anytime you do something new, you know, you said it, Coach Holler said it. I mean, it's going to feel uncomfortable, but to me, that's the only way we grow. I mean,
Right.
if we're not feeling uncomfortable and all we're doing is just staying in our comfort zone, we're going to get the same results.
Right.
You know, no matter what, you have to step outside your comfort zone. You have to try new things. You have to experiment with things. You know, we'll sit here and talk about, you know, things all off season that we want to do offensively, and who knows, they might be good, they might not be good, but we at least got to try them.
Right.
And I think you got to have that learning mentality nonstop. Otherwise, I don't think you're ever going to consistently get better. Right? People are going to continue to adapt. People are continue to get better. Just because I did it and it was successful at one point in my life doesn't mean that's going to necessarily work now, or necessarily mean that there's a better way to do it. So I think that's what I'm most excited about. You know, we've had this new staff, we have a new coach right now, and I feel like there's just so many new ideas that are
Mhm.
coming to Ankeny. You know, I kind of liken it back to, you know, when we first met with Coach Holler. So I think, you know, I'm hoping we can take it to another level, but you have to be surrounded, I think, by an atmosphere and group of people who want to get better and don't just want to sit there and say, you know what, well, we didn't do that in 1988. Well, you know what? The game's changed a little bit now too, and people change, and there's new technology and new ideas that I think you consistently have to have your eyes and ears open to those things. Otherwise, the game passes you by.
Yeah. Our strength coach, we got him 2 years ago. He interned at Northwestern, and we got to go watch a practice 2 years ago. And then I realized, oh, we're doing the same warm ups that they do, which is the old school flex of like getting lines. We're going to do this down the lines and stuff. And so this year I was like, how stupid is this flex period? And we just kept doing it. And well, Northwestern did it. And I was like, yeah. And they're one of the slowest teams. No offense to any of them, but if you looked at the Big Ten for the past 2 years before that, I was like, if you look at it, they got worn out by the year when it was over. And so I just kept saying, how stupid is this? How stupid is this? We're getting tired. Why can't we go individual groups and do some type of offensive line thing or quarterback thing? And that's our warm up, And I made that comment. I was like, I did this in 2004. Like, why do we have to keep doing this? Let's change it up a little bit. And it's because that's all the kid knew. I mean, he's way younger than me. He's like, that's what I know. And I'm like, you'll learn. We don't need to do this no more. And I want to say the Northwestern thing 2 years ago, never saw anything that was reported. I just want people to know that. Never saw it.
Yeah, I mean, we've gotten rid of team flex. We don't do any of that stuff either. We've got 2 speed days that we do during the week, and those are, I mean, it's all the wake up drills and speed drills.
Yep.
We focus more on max speed just because I feel like football is so acceleration driven.
Yep.
We see our kids doing enough acceleration stops and starts by just playing the game of football that we don't spend a ton of time with that.
Yep.
So it's all max speed driven because max speed is what goes fastest. It leaves the fastest. So if you're not consistently watering it, doing it on a weekly basis, obviously it's going to go away. But for us, dude, it's 10 minutes. We'll either time them on a Sunday or a Monday. Our kids know exactly if they're getting faster or not. If they feel like crap from the week before on a Friday, our kids know. They just, hey, I'm not running today, Coach Walz, and nobody says anything to them other than maybe asking a couple questions. Hey, what's hurt? Have you gone in to see Grant, our trainer, who does a phenomenal job as well communicating it? But it just lets everyone know where they're at. And then your developmental players, the guys that are fresh or the guys that haven't played, maybe just a little bit of JV and stuff like that, they're getting faster. It's a really good speed development thing. And then the next thing we'll do is either a Wednesday or Thursday. We kind of alternate which day we'd do it. We'd run wickets. And again, we're not killing them. We're not going to run 8 wickets or 8 sets of it. It's 2 or 3 and get those guys going. And then we'd have, maybe a different thought process. I'd go a little bit longer over with our skill kids or faster kids. So maybe it was a 7-foot wicket, 7.5 every now and again we'd get going. And then with some of our linemen or guys that maybe aren't as flexible, guys a little bit shorter, it'd just be 6 feet. We go every 2 yards. And then other days we'd say, hey, I want to work on, turnover. So I'd make them really, really short and they'd go maybe 3 or 4 of them, but it's going to be a shorter wicket. And it'd just be a focus on, hey, turn it over, work in cycles. So getting their full leg cycle going correctly and quickly. But that's literally all we'd have to do with that stuff. And then like you're saying, hey, why go through a whole team flex period? We wouldn't on those other days. The other days it's all just football related.
Yep.
Hey, we're going to go straight into individual, or maybe it was a 5-minute correction period really fast.
Yep.
Where we'd fix a few things. And it's like, all right, now we're into Indy. Take your centers, your QBs, your running backs. We just call it exchange period. Hey guys, it's 5 minutes warm up. QBs call the run play. They hand off to the running back. You pump fake your RPOs. The centers are doing their footwork. We get an extra 25, 30 snaps every single day, and everyone else is over in Indy. So, I mean, there's ways you can get around it where you're, quote, warming up that are actually getting you better at football.
Right.
Is what we legitimately say. Those 10 to 15 reps that you're getting during that 10-minute period, those things add up over the course of a season. I mean, if that's what you're doing 3 days a week, that's 30 more reps.
Yep.
10 weeks, that's 300 more reps of whatever it is we're trying to get better at, instead of me doing a walking knee hug and me doing a stretch and me doing jumping jacks. So I just feel like those things accumulate over time to where we don't have to, worry about those things because our coaches are taking care of it by doing something football related to get those guys warmed up.
Right. We did that a couple of times where for some reason we didn't do flex. And so I said, okay, O-line, yesterday we struggled in pass protection. So we're going to go over and work on stuff. To me, I was like, we're working everything right now, hips, feet, ankles, and we're not going 100%. It was, hey, we're going to just make sure we're getting the right placement. Maybe there was a time where, hey, our inside zone steps look terrible. So we're going to go over there and just go through the steps. And we're moving. And, I know the warming up thing isn't a thing anymore, but we're moving. They're moving around.
Yeah.
Doing that with basketball. Like, I don't do stretches. And the kids are like coming from 8th grade. They're like, well, coach, when do we stretch? I'm like, you don't. What do you mean you don't? I'm like, I give you 15 minutes before practice just to shoot around and you're moving and stuff, right? There you go. And it's not processing with them. And like, what do we do before a game to warm up? I'm like, well, you're going to do shooting. You're just going to go around and shoot. What do you mean? You're moving around. I don't need you to do something where you're tired. Well, coach, we got 30 minutes left. Should I go shoot? I'm like, no, wait till like 15 minutes. What do you mean? Well, I don't want you tired. And so it's just, even with kids, they're getting taught the old school thing, then they get to me and it's going out. Like they don't have to worry about it anymore. And some parents don't like it, and I'm like, I kind of don't care either. I'm like, you don't have to
Yeah,
care. You don't have to like it.
yeah. We
Um,
we changed like our pregame. You thought it's interesting you talk about, you know, your basketball pregame. We changed what we'd kind of done pregame as well. I mean, we still go out an hour before, but we don't wear pads.
right.
So
Yep.
everything we've done when we go out like early with your skill dudes, your, you know, kickers, punters, snappers, all of that, and then we have, you know, receivers and QBs are out there. Everything was, when it was warm outside, it was t-shirt and shorts. So they
Hmm.
have a helmet, t-shirt and shorts. They'd go out and they love it. I mean, the guys are moving freely. They look fast. They're not sweating through all of their, you know, equipment, things like that. So they feel great. And then they would go back in after, you know, about that 20 minutes, take 15 minutes. All right, put your pads on, put your shoulder pads on, get taped up, all the stuff that you needed to do. And then we would go out. It'd be just a brief, you know, indie period. And then we're straight
Hmm.
into our team stuff, defensive team. You do those things. I felt like it was way better too. I mean, we had games where you're playing where it's about 100 degrees
Hmm.
and they're not, you know, gassed out before they even take a snap, where I feel like, you know, maybe a few teams, you watch them, they're out there in their full uniform, 45 minutes to an hour for the game, they're doing a stretch, you're sitting in the 100-degree heat, and it's like, dude, you guys are going to have issues with, you know, hydration and staying cool just because of the way that you warm up. But again,
Yep.
all that stuff again goes back to the feed the cats mentality. We want you to be obviously ready to perform at an optimal level, but why are we doing these things an hour before, you know, the actual competition? It's
Right.
ludicrous to me.
It's I think what Coach Harper told me, it's kind of like a show we would put on. He's like, when you guys go out there and warm up for doing all this stuff and do this and this, it's like a show. And
Yeah.
maybe it was Coach Dixon, I don't remember. And I'm like, that's true. So like this year, offense will go out and warm up on the game field, not the practice field. And I used to do, you do one-on-ones, you're hitting or whatever. They come to me and I go, hey, just get a partner. They're going to line up, head up you, just quick inside zone step, quick wide zone step. So that way, just mentally we're visualizing it and it's very
Yep.
slow. And then we line up and just say, okay, remember this is how they're going to line up. This might how we have to block it. You step to it very quickly. They're not using any energy. I talk to them, they go get water, and then they wait as we're watching everybody else do their stuff. And I remember the first game this year, they're like, Coach, what are you doing? And I'm like, they're gonna stand here and get water and rest. What do you mean? I want their bodies to reset before this game for the O line perspective. Like, I don't want them tired. And the kids loved it. They're like, and two of my kids that have been with me since they were sophomores, now seniors, they didn't understand it at first. They're like, this isn't Coach Steve. We're hitting. We're supposed to do this. We're supposed to do this. I want to do this. And I'm like, good. Go hit the other team. Don't worry about what I'm doing. And this was the healthiest O line I've had since I got to the school. Every year, every game, I never had the same starting O line once in 2.5 years, 3 years. They always got hurt. This year was the first time where every single game, except one or two, I had the same starting lineup the whole time. And I was like, maybe there is something here. At least I'm telling myself that. But I mean, it just people can understand it during the game. Like, why is the O line standing on the sideline? Even I can hear the fans. And I'm like, don't worry about what I'm doing. But like, they're relaxing. They're sitting, they're relaxing, they're resetting their bodies. You know, they just did a D line drill for 10 minutes that had nothing to do with anything. And so they're going to relax for a little bit.
Yeah, they'll be ready to go with Friday. Trust me, they'll be ready to
Uh-huh.
go when the first snap's going. So I mean, yeah, it's just funny. I mean, I think it even bleeds over into, you know, their lives. You talk about, you know, fans and parents. It bleeds over. They feel like their kid always has to be doing something,
Uh-huh.
right? It would bother me, you know, of having to talk to kids and parents like, yeah, my dad woke me up at 7 o'clock on the weekends. I'm like, dude, you tell them to quit waking you up early.
Uh-huh.
You know, sleep in, get your recovery. Sleep is important. Taking naps is important. It's okay. You know, having to put them in another activity, having to put them in another thing. They always just feel like maybe they're falling behind, when it's like, you got to find that good balance. I get it. You have to be skillful. You have to be ready to go. You have to be prepared. But at the same time, if it's robbing from, you know, the kids' happiness and health and recovery, to me now that's where it gets to be a problem. You know, I still tell our kids, I'm like, you know, I tell them on the weekend, hey, go be a kid.
Yep.
I mean, our football program is as serious as any of them, and I think I think we make it fun enough to where our kids want to be a part of it. But at the same time, I'm telling them, hey, Saturdays they don't come in at all. It's like, hey, go be a kid, go watch a college game, go have a blast, go be with your family, go be with your friends, your girlfriend, whatever it is. Like telling them to go be a kid. That I think so much of it gets taken from them now when they're sixth and seventh graders, and you live in a big city. There's just so many opportunities for those kids to. I got to go to this trainer. I got to go do
Uh-huh.
this thing. I got to do this.
Yep.
It's like, I mean, I get it, man. If it's done healthy and you like it and you enjoy it, hey, I'm all for it. But if it's something that's kind of being forced upon them, that's a conversation that I think you really need to have with your kids, because ultimately at the end of the day, their happiness and their healthiness is going to be the biggest factor for you. That I think you need to have those little mental breaks for them, and they need to have some time off. I mean, I'm also big on I love multiple sports, but
Hmm.
there's some kids who are hey, they're a four sport athlete, and let's be honest, you and I were having the conversation at the start. Basketball can be year round.
Yep.
Some of our kids are doing outdoor track and indoor track. It can almost become like a year round type deal for them. Baseball can be a year round type deal that I think, some kids need to have a chill zone. They need to have an off time where it's 6 weeks to 8 weeks where all they do is recover, I think, for a week or two, and then they just get to lift weights. They get to do, easy speed work where they don't have to worry about competing all the time and grinding all the time and games all the time. That I think the body does recover, and I'm seeing it right now with some of our kids. This is the first opportunity they had to lift. Like all of a sudden, they put on 5 pounds of good weight. They
Hmm.
don't look stressed. They look athletic. They look explosive, and they think they start to feel that too. So I think there's also some of this. Like I said, I'm a huge multiple sports proponent. I want kids to be active, but at the same time, there's so many of the club aspects and the competition aspects and the year round go that I think you also need to find some of that time for them to, hey, you need some time to recover and train.
Yeah. I had a kid last year as a freshman. He played basketball for me November to February. Took a week off, went and played AAU basketball until June. And then June hits, you're doing high school basketball, you're doing high school football. And I could tell in June he was very burnt out. And you know,
Yeah.
God bless his mom and dad. They get along with me. They're like, we're here to support him. He wants to do this. And I said, cool, I get it. But when he was burnt out, I went up to him and I said, do you feel a little burnt out? You feel like a lot's going on right now? And he goes, yeah, I'm trying to do basketball. I'm trying to do football. And I'm like, you need a break, like just a break. And so I think we had talked to dad and we're like, hey, just give him this week off. Like when we got done with basketball into football, just give him a week off. And that helped a lot because we were doing 7-on-7s in June. Um, he our 6'3", 215-pound quarterback decided not to play his senior year. So this kid who's a sophomore we're trying to make him our starting quarterback. That's even more pressure. But having a week off helped him a lot. And so then when we got into July, we made sure we got done a week before our dead period. So they had 2 weeks off and before we started going again. Um, I like to throw that in there. Our 6'3", 215-pound quarterback didn't play. Love it.
That sucks.
To focus on baseball. If that tells you anything.
Sucks. But I
Because
mean, like I say, it does suck, you know, but at the same time, you almost, I mean, if kids have goals, you almost got to support them. You know what I'm saying? I mean, as bad as it sucked, I mean, I've had kids that, they've quit or they've left. And as long as I think I mean, as long as I think they're going to do something that maybe they're passionate about, I'm all for it. But like you, I mean, I don't know the kid's situation, but if it's something where it's like, they're being pressured, or someone else is maybe making the decision for them, that's when maybe I get a little bit leery. But I've had kids. There's a kid right now. He was at Iowa. Went at on a football scholarship that I coached, Brody Breck.
uh-huh.
But he also was playing baseball. So I mean, he's a freak athlete. One of the best receivers I've ever coached. One of the best kids I've ever coached. And when he would ask for my opinion, yeah, I want him to play football, but I would say, dude,
Mhm.
you're going to be a major league baseball player.
Right.
So, like I said, like don't feel bad about at some point you're going to have to make a decision and choose one of them. You're not going to be able to do both.
Right.
And ultimately he did. I mean, he's a top 5 pitching prospect in the United States. He's going to get drafted. He's got Jeff Samardzij's brother as his agent, so I mean, a big Cubs dude. But I just, as much as it ever pains you to say, hey, you want the kid to go in the sport that you coach. I mean, I just feel like at the end of the day, if a kid's passionate about something, you got to let him chase it.
Mhm.
And I think being supportive of those kids and whatever decision they make and being excited for them and congratulating them and celebrating with them. I mean, to me, that sends the bigger message. I mean, yeah, it sucks, but at the end of the day, you want to see those kids be successful.
Yeah, we were all frustrated just because it put pressure on us. And then we all took a step back and we were like, well, hopefully he gets a scholarship. And I think he just signed today to go to Quincy Division II for baseball. And
Awesome.
we were like, awesome, awesome. Yeah. You see this kid and you go, I think it was more because we were, obviously you want him to play football. And then we were trying to try to tell him, hey, if you play football, it's just going to help you that more in baseball to get recruited. Chose not to. Ends up getting a baseball scholarship, and we're like, that is awesome because you're representing the school and all that stuff. So it still worked. It worked itself out.
Absolutely.
But that competitive side of a coach is like, well, we want this 6'3", 215-pound quarterback to play because he could just run people over, and it's just, you know, and then you have a sophomore quarterback come in and have to learn everything. But that's part of coaching, right? Like we have to adapt to what we have, especially in the public school where you just get what you get. And
Yeah.
we're not private and can't recruit. So whatever we get, we got to move with it. And like I said, it worked out. We made the playoffs. We did all those things. We're like, look, it worked itself out. He gets a scholarship. We had a good season.
No
And,
doubt. And to me, that's always my favorite part of coaching. I mean, you talk, okay, our situation at Ankeny, this year, new staff, new head coach, a bunch of just a lot of new stuff. And then, I
right.
mean, you talk about what's coming back, kind of on both sides of the ball. Not a lot of returning starters. I mean, nobody had us ranked in the top 10. No, I think it was the last day of maybe something in the summer where they actually sent out the media to say, "Oh yeah, Ankeny's got a football team this year." I mean, it kind of felt like that. I mean, and our kids, they ran with it. They felt a little bit slighted, knowing how successful the program's been in the past. But I get it too. There's a lot of question marks, but that's what made it fun as a coach. You're breaking in a brand new quarterback who no one's seen before. You're breaking in, a couple of unproven receivers and offensive linemen and some kids that are undersized. And same thing, defensively, we're having to replace a lot of people. We're not the biggest up front, but I know this: there wasn't one coach that didn't just relish that fact of, holy cow, we're going to be the underdogs. We're going to develop kids. We're going to coach everybody. We're going to find ways to get dudes reps and change the way that we practice. And man, it was a next man up mentality the entire year. 2 starters on defense go out. Like I said, we're undersized a little bit on offense, and our guys just balled out.
Mhm.
And they just kept playing and they kept proving people wrong. Upset a couple of teams in the playoffs, and holy cow, we end up in the state finals against an unbelievable Southeast Polk team. But to piggyback off what you're saying, I mean, it was one of the most fun years I've had coaching, just because the expectations from maybe an outside perspective were pretty
Mhm.
low, but knowing from our aspect, we knew we had talented players, and we knew we had kids who were going to uphold that tradition of Hawk football. And it was awesome to see those guys lay it on the line. Guys playing injured, guys playing multiple positions, and guys really contributing any way that they could to, holy cow, have an unbelievable season where we finish runner up when nobody really gave us a snowball's chance in hell.
Yeah, we had the similar thing. People said this team's going to win 3 games. I think they said we're going to win 3 games. We went 2-7 last year. They're like they're only going to win 3 games. This kid's not playing. We graduated a really fast receiver. Blah 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 blah.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever. And our regular season, we ended 6-3 regular season. go on the road for the playoffs into a city because we're the suburbs of Chicago, go play a city school. One, it was the first road playoff win for the school since 1997. And we're
Wow.
like, look at this. And we made the playoffs for the first time since 2014. Then we play the second round. We were the 25th seed. They were the 9 seed. And we went to toe with them. What changed the game was we turned the ball over 5 times, I think. That's what killed it. And we went toe to toe with them. I think we lost by 10. So it's like toe to toe with this team that was 8-1, blah, 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 blah. And, you know, the papers still didn't want to, the papers never talked about us till that week, round 2. It was all of a sudden
Mhm.
like, oh, yeah, they have a football team. We forgot. And our kids actually liked it. They were like, hey, nobody's talking about us. Nobody believes in us besides us. I run our social media pages, so I was the only person posting stuff for them. I was like, guys, we're the only ones that believe this. And we just grinded and never quit. And it was just awesome, and you love those type of things where you're unproven. And then next year we have a target on our back a little bit, but ultimately, it just showed how much fun we were having too. Like, well, they were like winning's fun. That's why it seemed like we were less stressed, but like the kids were just having a blast. And now you have some kids, man, we want to do these football stuff. We want to do extra work. We might be getting some kids to come back to play football. And so it's just awesome, and some kids might get back into sports, because we were a school that COVID just killed, like
Mhm.
set us back way back. Because we went to games with like only like 35 kids and the other team might have 50 and we beat them. Like one of the schools in Illinois, they're split into two. If they ever make the playoffs, their enrollment is 8,000. That's in our conference. And our school has 2,000. And we're like, this ain't fair. But we end up beating them because we outlasted them. And so we took those as strides and saying you beat an 8,000 enrollment, a 4,000 enrollment, and everything else. Look at our unproven sophomore quarterback. We had to replace our running back, our wide receiver. We had to replace our linebackers. It's just a blast.
Yeah. Like I said, it's why you coach. And I mean, and it always becomes kind of that mentality too. I mean, underdog. Are we going to sit here? Are we going to make excuses? Are we going to go,
Uh-huh.
woe is me? Are we going to feel, hey, they got this, they got that, they got this, or are you going to just look at it as a challenge? Yeah, you're right, they do. But guess what? They haven't played us yet, right?
Right.
We can outlast you. We can out scheme you. We can make a big play. I mean, there's just so many different ways you can win a football game that as long as your kids believe, you know.
Right. Um, Maybe off topic, who knows? Um, how did you end up there? Because I think I remember listening, you've been kind of all over the
Yeah.
place, coaching
Yeah.
everywhere.
Well, I ended up in Iowa for my wife.
Mm-hmm.
I'd actually been coaching in Oklahoma for a while. Um, Before that, I was actually back home in my hometown of Pierce, South Dakota, and I was lucky enough to meet Dub Maddox at Jenks
Yep.
through a couple of connections that we had. So interviewed with Dub and then got hired in Jenks. So that's how I ended up in Oklahoma. And was at Jenks for 3 years, at Tulsa for a while, and then I was at Broken Arrow. I went to Broken Arrow with Dave Alexander. He was the guy that was the offensive line coach, run game dude at Jenks. He ended up getting the head job at BA. And Broken Arrow had never won a state title. So I wanted to leave Jenks just because I felt like this was a place that hadn't experienced winning, and it was something that was a new challenge.
Mm-hmm.
So I was kind of ready for that. And we got to the finals my second year, we got second, and then they ended up winning it 2 years later. Well, anyway, while I'm at Broken Arrow, one of my good buddies from South Dakota had moved to Iowa at the time, and he had actually, met a girl or a woman, and then at a party he met basically who ended up being my wife, and he was like, "Hey, this girl, I think she'd be perfect for you." So once I met her, it was just like instant. How you kind of know, you just click.
Right.
So I tried my damnedest to get her to move to Oklahoma. Like, was in with the superintendent, Coach Alexander, say, hey, whatever we got to do. They'd met her. They knew she was a really, really nice lady too. And just couldn't get her to leave Iowa. Her family's here. She'd had the same job for a long time. So I kind of had to, hey, I'm either going to have to, break this off, or I'm going to have to move up there. And I knew
Right.
that she was the one. So ended up moving up here. I got pretty lucky at Ankeny High School. Rick Nelson was the old head coach. He just left. He went back to Northern Iowa. He's the offensive line coach at Northern Iowa. Awesome dude. But I remember I sent out probably 30 letters, emails to people, coaches. A little bit different in Iowa than it was in Oklahoma. Oklahoma, if we lost 2 games, I'd get fired.
Wow.
Iowa. I mean, hey, it's football is important. They love football, but at the same time, it's obviously your teaching job's a little bit more secure
Right.
than if we were losing games and things like that. But I got maybe kind of 3 responses. It was pretty crazy. But Coach Nelson had obviously coached in Oklahoma before. Heard of Jenks, heard of some of those places.
Mm-hmm.
So went and had lunch with him. Lucky enough, they had a chemistry spot open. I taught chemistry. So when interviewed for a job at Ankeny, I was hoping I would get it. I wasn't too sure because I didn't know how many coaches they'd hire in the building, things like that. But our principal did end up recommending me to get hired, so ended up moving up here. But kind of dumb luck that I ended up at Ankeny. If I would have been at Ankeny, there's a couple other schools around here. Coach Swenson at Valley was a guy that would have been a fun dude to work for, or even getting into Des Moines Public. But like I said, I got pretty lucky with Ankeny, and super glad that I did, because what an awesome place to work. I love it. It's a great community.
Yeah, it was that happy wife, happy life type of thing. I had to do the same thing.
Yeah. There was no way she was moving to Oklahoma. So like I said, I gotta keep her happy, and it's you're totally right. I mean, my life would be a mess without her. So it's been great. It's worked out awesome.
Yeah, because I grew up by Champaign-Urbana, and then by the U of I, and then went to Eastern Illinois. Met her there. She's from up here in the suburbs. Got her master's and everything, got a good job, and she was like, I can't pass this job up, so we're gonna have to move to the suburbs. So I was like, here we go. I'm a small town boy. We're up in the suburbs. And it's like, what's a 4-lane road? What are you talking about? I need my country roads. And so it was 2018 when that happened. And so it's been the adjustment, but yeah, same thing. Kind of like the same thing where I came up here, I had to put exactly like I had to send people stuff. I was an OC down in Charleston High School and like started sending out stuff. And what got me was a school here. He was like, hey, I coached at Charleston High School back in the 90s. Come talk to me. Went and talked to him. He goes, all right, you're on. And then I just kind of got my name going, popped around some high schools, and then I've been at this high school for 4 years. So it just happy wife, happy life, and you move around a little bit, and then you settle, and then you're there.
Absolutely. It was. I mean, she lived in West Des Moines, which is like literally it's a 30-minute drive to get up to Ankeny. So we had a condo down in West Des Moines, and it was just brutal driving every day. 30 minutes, 30 minutes, 30 minutes, 30 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So I kept telling her, I'm like, we need to move someplace a little bit closer. So she works kind of northwest of here, and we ended up settling on a place here in Polk City, and we love it here. It's kind of the best of both worlds, a little bit closer to hers and a lot easier drive for me in Ankeny. But I kept telling her, I'd figure out the math. I tell her, I'm spending 5 hours in a car every single day. I said, if I do that, or not 5 hours every single week, and I'd add it all up, I'm like wasting days of my life just sitting in a vehicle,
right,
and having to drive back and forth. And she's like, you know what? Yeah, that's true. So I mean, found a house that she wanted, and like you said, you just settle. And this is where we kind of want to be. She'll be retiring here soon. She's a little bit older than me, so she'll be able to retire. I'm going to keep working, but I think once she retires, then it's time. We'll move where I want to move. So that's actually I'm pretty excited about that too, because I want to move further south. I want to be someplace warm, and then let's also be honest. Hey, that's where the super competitive football. It's still the same. But I mean, when I say super competitive, like football's life. It can become kind of a career. They have athletic periods. I'd love to get back into that mode of where it was. I did teach, obviously, but I want to be at a place where football is king, and you got spring football and you got all those things. So I think we'll look at moving south here when she's ready to retire.
Was it like a big adjustment for you then going to Iowa?
Huge. Oh yeah, it massive. So I mean, like I said, it's hilarious because I mean, obviously I took great pride in my teaching. I taught chemistry, I taught math. You know, I was a PE teacher in other places. I'm certified in a lot of areas. Well, when I get to Iowa, I was only certified in chemistry. Like I
Mhm.
said, I could cross the river and teach 10 subjects, but in Iowa, it's very, very particular.
Right.
So going up there, you know, I would tell people stories like seriously, you know, at Jenks and any of these places, if we needed to game plan more, they'd give us Monday off and
Wow.
they give us a sub. It's like, hey, you guys got a big game this week, and nobody bat an eye. It wasn't even like people would be like, oh yeah, yeah, hey, it's a big game, we get it, we'll get you a sub, don't worry about it. So I mean, you'd have support like that. I would teach 4 classes, usually like weight room PE, and then I'd have a football class. So your football class, you'd meet, you'd lift, and then or you could go and go out and start practicing. You know, I got buddies in Texas now. They have 2 football periods, one at the start of the day, one at the end of the day, and they're running that. So I mean, it's just it was a whole new line of thinking. You know, your PE, your kids didn't have to take PE because football counted as their PE class.
Mhm.
So that's another adjustment. I mean, here, you know, there's 8 class periods. They have to take another PE, and it's still kind of foreign to me. It doesn't make a lot of sense, but I mean, whatever. It is what it is. But as far as you know, up here, you know, you're obviously your teaching job is going to come first, and then football is almost kind of looked like, hey, it's kind of a hobby for you. Well,
Yep.
not really. I mean, it's what got me into teaching. It's what got me into these things. So I mean, that was kind of a hard adjustment to me, but at the same time, I think it's changed over time. Hey, they know Coach Walz is a great teacher. He can build relationships. He can do all these things, and they can make a greater impact as a coach. So I think
Mhm.
they've kind of accommodated a little bit. They've done a better job of getting coaches in the building. Now we're seeing more kids get back out. Um, I just think it was a big adjustment. There was a lot of great things down there, but there's also a lot of great things here, and I think it's cool to work in a place where there is some open ideas. They will try to work with you and they allow us to kind of change and run it. And I'm excited for the future just because I think there's a lot of cool things that we can do and modify within the framework that they do give us.
Mhm.
But would I like to have athletic periods, dude? Absolutely. I mean, the kids want to do it. I've pulled kids at our school. I mean, athletes, it's like 99% say yes, they would love to have athletic periods. I mean,
Yeah.
why would they not want to do that? I mean, they allow kids to have vocal, the
Uh-huh.
choir. They allow kids to go do band. How is that any different? You talk about activities. I mean, I get it. That's an activity. I know they get a grade and things for that, but that's a passionate thing for a lot of those kids. They're able to do that during the school day. Why can't they do the same thing? Why do they have to call that quote extracurricular?
You're
Um,
you're preaching to the choir right now.
I mean, it just doesn't make any sense to me how some forms of development for a human being are accepted within the school day, and others have to be quote extra.
Mhm.
Um, it'll never. And at the same time, then you'll read the mission statement of all these schools, and we want to be adaptive to all learners. Do
Mhm.
you? So I mean, again, there's super supportive no matter where you go in this state, but at the same time, I feel like there's a lot of things we could do to maybe make things a little bit better if there were a little bit more open to some of these ideas. You know what? Slowly it's changing, but that's how education goes, man.
Mhm.
It's like a cruise ship trying to turn. It takes forever.
Oh, you're preaching to the choir. My head coach would love to hear all that because we said the same thing. We talk to Texas coaches and stuff at clinics, and we listen to what they get to do, and we're like, that would be awesome to just. Some say they practice in the morning. Some say they just
Yep.
practice in between classes, and they get it done, and they can do film. And I'm like, this sounds awesome.
Well, and you get to work with. I mean, so someone will have it set up with JV or ninth grade. You can coach your ninth grade kids in the morning,
Hmm.
right? So you'd be free as a coordinator or an O-line coach. You coach your freshmen in the morning with your other freshman coaches. And then
Yeah.
you have the afternoon period. Okay, I get to watch film, or I'm in the weight room for those weight classes that you have, and see your kids. And then you're preparing for a meeting, and then you get to go out and practice. I mean, the what people don't understand, they just like, oh, you're just going to go coach and you're playing a game. No, I'm in charge. I'm in charge of 200 and some kids.
Mm-hmm.
And not to mention, you're in charge of managing a group of 7, 8, 9, 10 coaches.
Yep.
Um, there's a lot of responsibility there. The relationship building piece, the pieces of where we're teaching them, character and showing up on time and being dedicated to a cause. I mean, I think a lot of people lose sight of that. They think we're just out there like we're playing Madden and just calling plays
No.
and having fun.
No.
Which, don't get me wrong, it's why I do it. It is fun. There's a great aspect to it, but at the same time, um, any athlete will tell you that's their favorite class. That's their favorite time of the day. I mean, it's more than just a game.
Yep.
I think.
And the amount of hours we put in,
Mm-hmm.
like, so people are like, it's just a hobby. Do you see all the hours we put in and not being home sometimes? And, when you do come home, you do something for an hour, then you're just watching film or
Yeah.
I reach out to people and ask questions. You're doing all that, or you have a college football game on, you see something cool, so you write it down, say like, oh, look at, like, you're just constantly
Mm-hmm.
working and your mind's going. And, when football was over for us, I went right into basketball, but I was still in football mode. I didn't know it was December. I did the podcast yesterday. I was talking to Coach Ambrose, up there, and he
Yeah.
was like, I've been off football for only 2 weeks because they made it to the state title game. And I was like, what? He goes, yeah, I've only been done for like 2 weeks. I'm like, what do you mean? He goes,
Yeah.
Steve, it's December. And I started laughing, recording. And I'm like, oh shit. Sorry. I didn't
Yeah.
mean it. I didn't know.
Yeah. Like right now, I mean, again, we have to go in after school because again, you can't get all the lifting done that you need in a 40-minute class period.
Yep.
And PE, like 8 minutes to get dressed, 8 minutes
Yep.
before to go get dressed again. So I mean, you're talking by the time they're ready to roll, you got 25 minutes. So we got kids coming in after school. I go in there every day. Again, well, you're saying you don't have to. Well, yeah, I do.
Mhm.
You're the offensive coordinator. You need to be visible. You need to see
Yep.
who's working, who's there, who's developing, who do I need to talk to? Who's doing a great job, who maybe isn't. So I mean, the off season now is still no off season. We're meeting with
No.
kids. We're evaluating. You're evaluating scheme, just like you said. We're all fans, but at the same time, it's like how do we continue to build on the success that we've had?
Mhm.
If I'm going to do something, I don't want to half-ass it. I don't want to
Right.
be average. If we're just going to be average and you're working for someone that wants to be average, I'm probably not going to work for that person for very long.
Right.
If we're going to put our freaking name to it's going to be excellent, and we're going to do the
Right.
best that we can, just because that's the standard of people and who we are.
Right.
I'm not going to, hey, I got a brand new truck, and I'm not going to take care of it, right? I'm going to take it in, get it worked on, make sure it's working good and looking good. That's the same thing. I don't want to drive around in a beater.
Mm-hmm.
I want my football program to be the best it can be too.
Right. And the big piece, which I know culture is not the word anymore, and I don't even know what you call it.
We still call it culture.
I do too. It's just, I know that word gets thrown around all the time.
No question. It's the buzzword.
It's the buzzword. So I'm always careful, and I still say it, but part of it is if you're telling those kids to do all this stuff, you better be doing things
100%.
to show them that you're doing it. And then off season, you still have to have the relationship with them. So you may not see them every day anymore, but the moment you do, you should go talk to them for a minute and continue that. Send them a message every once in a while, like, hey, how's basketball going? Hey, how's wrestling going? How's the grades going? And so that way you're constantly still there, and people don't realize that, like you said, that's the huge part, is how can you relate to these kids? And it wasn't like when we all play where the coach could just be one way. You have to treat these kids differently. Like, this kid's not going to respond this way. This kid I can joke with. This kid I know has a rough home life, so I have to be careful of certain things you say or how you act because maybe they have a trauma. Like, so you're constantly doing that 12 months out of the year. It never stops. And people that don't coach and just teach and leave at 3 o'clock, they don't know. They have no clue. Well, I build relationships in the classroom. I'm like, I know you do, and that's awesome, and I appreciate that. But then from 3:30 to 6, or not even that long, we're doing it again. And then we go home and a kid sends you a message about how I coached at a school where the kids didn't want to go home because of where they lived.
Yeah.
And so you have to deal with that. And then, like, coach, I might go rob somewhere because I have no food. Well, what are you supposed to do? And it's like, no offense to the teachers and counselors, they went home at 3 o'clock. We don't stop. We never stop ever.
No, no, it's, and again, it's why we do what we do though. Seriously. I mean,
Yeah.
that's, it's just part of the job. Um, the hours that we put in, but at the same time, it's like, I wouldn't have it any other way, you
No.
know, but it's also, but I know what you're saying and what we're saying. It's like, you know, be appreciative of it too, and give it its credence. When somebody just says it's just a game, it just really irritates me. You know, I don't want to bag on anyone else's career or life, but like, you know, football's like a huge part of my life.
Yep.
You know, seriously, like if I didn't coach, I didn't, you know, play football, do all those things. Like there's a lot of things in my life that I wouldn't have, and that would be, you know, pretty weird. Like I would have never met my wife
Hmm.
if I didn't coach football, you know, and know coaches and know people and things like that. So I mean, there's so many avenues and doors that get opened by it, and so many people get helped through this game that it's not just a game.
Hmm.
The 48 minutes that we're on the field, maybe,
Yep.
but the other 365 days that we're around it and building these relationships with kids, absolutely. And you talk about culture, that's one thing that I think, you know, Coach Bauer's come in at Ankeny, and it's, I've gotten more messages and more people that have come up to us and talked to us about like we just love the culture that you guys are building, is what so
Hmm.
many parents say, so many kids say, so many former players say, and I think all that's a testament to Coach Bauer. Just the expectation of kids working hard, kids not quitting, kids being men of character has been a big one that he's really, you know, preached about. And again, you know, I think sometimes when you talk about it and you're public about being men of character, people try to take shots at you
Hmm.
because you're gonna mess up. You're gonna
Yeah.
have kids who do bad things. You're gonna have, you know, coaches who make bad decisions at times. But that's not, to me, what it is all the time. The whole thing is, it's like, hey, we know we're trying to be men of character.
Yep.
We're going to talk to them about it. We're going to educate them about it. You know, it. We want them to be good students. That's a big thing for Coach Bauer. He talks about, hey, you know, do your classwork. Sit up in class. Make sure
Uh-huh.
you're a person that the teacher can call on or can count on.
Right.
And if they are, you know, slipping up a little bit, it's easy for us to have these conversations not only with the kid but with the teachers as well. I think they feel like, you know, we're approachable people and we will, you know, do our best to rectify some of the situations. But you know, yeah, that's what, you know, it's like the people that, oh, you go to church, oh, you go to church and you believe in God or something like that, and then all of a sudden they see the person, you know, smoking, or they see the person having a beer or something like that, and
Right.
they want to, oh yeah, look at that, he's not really that much of a churchgoer or whatever. It's like, well, dude, you know, people are not perfect, we get it, but at the same time, there's a lot of things that we're trying to do that I feel like the kids are buying into and the kids
Uh-huh.
are doing. And I think there's a lot of people who are appreciative of that. We're not just saying, hey, win at all costs, you know, try to win state titles, things like that. We're still trying to build men of great character in our program. And it's nice to hear that people are seeing that.
Right. One of the biggest things you said was to show the kids it's okay to mess up. Like I think I said it today in practice. Like, guys, it's okay for you
Yeah.
to make mistakes. I made a mistake today in practice. I think I said the wrong drill. Or like in football, sometimes I might say, hey, you're supposed to block this. And they're like, well, coach, it was wide zone or it was inside zone. Oh, you're right. Or whatever it is. Like those are small things, but like when we screw up, I'll straight up tell them when I screw up and I'll apologize. And then you have to show that you're gonna get better. And I
Yeah.
think that's the biggest thing, to show them like, oh, it's okay to make a mistake and I'm not going to get reamed or, you know. And another thing I try not to say to kids is there's consequences, but sometimes I say there's a trade off. Like, hey, there's a trade off. You decided to do this. So the trade off is X, Y, and Z, you know, and that's consequences for what you chose. And I told them the same thing. Like, my trade off is I'm here all day. The trade off is I see my wife less, you know, so that's why I'm here
Mm-hmm.
working as hard as I can. And they appreciate that. I think like you said, this was the year where it kind of broke through for us because I got to the school during COVID like an idiot. I was like, COVID won't last this long. Be hired there. Well, you know, then there we were. But it's finally clicked, I think, a little bit of if we're showing it's okay to mess up, it's okay that we're here doing this with you guys, you'll buy in. And they finally started to. Now the question becomes it's never going to stay the same. It has to mold, it has to form, and we have to change a little bit. And then how do you continue to do it year in, year out? Because it's going to be a different team. How do you get them all to continue to buy in? And so, like you said, but that's the fun part, like the challenge and the fun part of doing it. And that's why we're there hours upon hours a day
Yeah.
and not home.
It certainly helps with your credibility too when it's successful, right?
Right.
You guys make the playoffs first time since 2014, so it kind of gives you a little bit of almost what I call street cred.
Right.
I think you get a little bit of that behind it. It at least gets kids to buy in, but at the same time, you can't get complacent and say, "Hey, we're here," and it should all just kind of take care of itself. It's still, how do you treat people? How do you talk to people? Am I still going to the weight room? Do we still care about these things? I think all those things have to be cultivated on a daily basis, literally a daily basis. Yep. Otherwise, it just starts to slip. I mean, I think you said it before. You're talking about like, hey, your inside zone steps get bad. Well, maybe that's because we start to think about something else. Like, oh yeah, we want to install this new play, or I want to do this, and all of a sudden, then your basic fundamentals deteriorate. It's like, man, I got to do these things every single day.
Yep.
Otherwise, it's not going to happen. And I feel like that's where, maybe some people, miss the boat because they'll put something on a poster or have a slogan or something like that, but it's not something they go back to every day, which is what I felt like, that was one of the big things with Coach Bauer and our coaching staff, men of character. Like, yep. you keep saying that, and you keep, hey, trying to model that. And then, like you said, hey, when I mess up, everybody messes up, but here's how we learn from it. Here's how we get better from it. I mean, there's a couple of times like when kids have gotten in trouble, and I'll talk to them, and I think they're expecting like, oh man, Coach Walz is just going to come hammer me, and they're going to get it. And I think they're surprised maybe sometimes when I'm like, hey man, it's all right. People make mistakes, and they're kind of like, they kind of almost pull back a little bit, like, really? Like, so I've even said to a couple of them, like, hey, I know you messed up, but I get it. And you're kind of like, really? I go, I get it. I know why you did that.
Yep.
I know why you responded that way. Said, but here's maybe a better way that you do. And I think once they hear that human side, or they hear your story of, I've messed up, I've done this before, all of a sudden now that credibility and put yourself on their level goes a long way.
I did not. This is what, my 14th year. I didn't do that at first because it was old school. 14 years ago, it's old school. Yeah. And then and I would never tell them, like, I would never tell a kid I screwed up in high school. I would never tell them I did something stupid. And then, I don't know, maybe 5 years ago or so, I started to do that because of a school I coached at. Like I said, they did not want to go home. I had kids living out of a car. I had kids living in a hotel room. And I realized, oh, they have it worse than I do. So when something come up that I could relate to, I would start to tell them. And a couple of kids that might have been gangbangers and stuff like that. And I'll never forget, a kid was like, a coach has never yelled at me like that before. And I'm like, oh God, he's going to try to beat me up or something. And he goes, you're all right. Anytime you're in trouble, call this number. And I'm like, oh, thanks. I appreciate that. But that's because there was a respect factor of, I respected what they're going through, blah, blah, blah. We are going to treat you the same as everybody else. We're going to try to get the best out of you. And then I slowly started to tell people I've done stupid things. And like you said, they respect that way more of, maybe they know what they're talking about a little bit. I say that sometimes, like, Coach Steve knows a little something, doesn't he? And they're like, yeah, he does. And then I tell them that's why I have a receding hairline, because of you guys. It's starting to happen.
Yep.
And the gray hair is popping in.
I got plenty of those.
I hate it. And I think someone told me you get gray from football and bald in basketball. I don't remember. And so I was like, oh, so both is going to happen to me. Great. Thanks for that.
It makes you more wise. you look more wise. They know you've been around a while.
I know sometimes during the season, like, Coach, you all right? You look a little beat up. And I'm like, got some miles on me, guys. It's okay. Started coaching when I was 18, 19 years old, and I'm 33 now. I'm like, I got some miles.
Seen a few things, heard a few stories.
Oh yeah, I got lots of things, especially what I've coached at 7 or 8 high schools, and I've coached all sports except soccer, track, baseball, basketball, football, and I wouldn't trade it for anything because I took pieces of every single one of those schools and pieces from every one of those head coaches, and have molded into what I'm doing now, good, bad. And so I tell people, you got to coach at different places sometimes. Like, you just got to. Don't
Yeah,
coach at your
yeah.
high school all the time. Jump around a little bit, and it actually helps me relate to kids more and learns how to talk to kids, being in different situations. Like you did, you've been in different places. I'm sure it's the same thing. You took pieces, and you're able to relate to a wide range of people.
It's experiences. I mean, it's the best way to learn. I think. Again, some people learn by, seeing someone else do it. I was never one of them. I had to experience it.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it was going to be a mistake or it worked out great, that was going to be the way I learned. But um, yeah, I think just meeting new people, being in new scenarios, new situations. Like, never thought in the world I'd do a podcast,
No,
right?
me either. No.
Meeting the number of people that you get to meet there, that it just opens so many doors for you. I mean,
Uh-huh.
we have kids, kids looking to get recruited or whatever. You know somebody somewhere, or somebody that knows that somebody, so you can make a connection that way. But I just feel like, yeah, if you just stay in one zone and you don't open your eyes up to all the different horizons and things that are out there, it just makes you so close minded. I
Yep.
mean, I feel like, yeah, you go to a lot of different places, you experience diversity of thought, diversity of people, just the different ways that people act and are.
Mm-hmm.
I just think you just get used to it, and to me, it's the coolest part. Everybody's different, and not everybody's
Yeah.
the same, and that's probably what makes football the most fun. You
Yes.
gotta have kickers, you gotta
Yep.
have you gotta have skill people. You know, Urban Meyer, not probably the most popular guy to some people anyway, but
Right.
I loved what he said in his book about, and it'll be the one big takeaway I took from him. But if you're going to be a good football program, all 9 of your positions need to be elite.
Yep.
If I want to be elite, it just can't be. I've got an elite defense, and our offense is okay, and our special teams are okay. You're not going to be elite.
Right.
You have to love all of those things. That's why people want to mess around with kickers and punters. Like, dude, those guys are important. They're unbelievably important, especially when you need to make big kicks or flip the field and things like that. I just feel like that's why I love football so much, because it takes everybody, different styles of coaches. They can't all be the same. You got to have guys that are a little bit different styles,
Yep.
different ways that they teach things, and then teaching everyone to get on the same page, to work together. It's literally the ultimate team game, and it's
Mm-hmm.
such a microcosm of so many things you got to be able to do in life.
Mm-hmm. And then that's how these podcasts work, because we all love talking about it. We all want to hopefully give back to other people. I've met coaches that don't.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But like you said, people I went to high school with, they still can't believe I do a podcast. They're like, they know who I am. And they're like, you do a podcast? And I'm like, yes. And I still can't believe it. Like, I mean, a coach in Iowa, I've met, like you've met way more people, but like slowly, like, oh, you met all these college coaches, you meet all these high school coaches, then they go to college, or then they do this. And then like, uh, I text college coaches or certain high school coach, congrats on the new job. And then you keep in touch, and it's just amazing. And no offense to other type of coaches, but it's only been football related. And I know there's great basketball coaches and stuff like that, but it's been football. It's been, building that community and relationship. And so then I bump into them in clinics too. That's the best. You do this, you see them at a clinic, you start talking, and it just blows up. And like you said, it's just resources and relationships, and it's the best. Yeah, I played all three sports. This by far has been the best one with everything.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Hands down. Not even close.
Well, Coach, I've taken a lot of your time. I appreciate it. There was no scheme talked about, but I like doing this part. This part
Oh,
I love.
yeah, dude, it's like I said, we were the same with Run the Power. It was seat of your pants, never had a script. We might have a question or two that we wanted to ask somebody if they came on, scheme related, but at the end of the day, I mean, we're all running basically the same plays, and we probably just teach them all just a little bit different. So I mean, sometimes it fits, sometimes it doesn't. I don't know. I think sometimes the scheme stuff can get a little bit can lead a little bit I don't know, monotonous, and
Uh
maybe something that they don't want to run anyway, right? Some triple option guy is not going to want to listen to me talk about the I formation, and some I formation guy is not going to want to listen to me talk about RPO game or something like that. So you always kind of limit yourself maybe when you do talk a little bit about scheme. But
huh.
everybody loves coaching, everybody loves talking ball, and that's all we're doing.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to start a Twitter fight like back in COVID where it was Wing T versus Air Raid. Those were fun times. I was all part of it. I stirred the pot.
Duo versus inside zone.
Oh, that's the best one. And that's funny. I learned duo more this offseason, and I talked to a coach and I tried to make a joke and I said, "Hey, so what's the difference?" And he was like sat up and he's like, "I've been running duo for like 10 years. What are you talking?" Like I was joking. I apologize. Uh Same thing with wide zone and outside zone. When I first learned it a couple of years ago, I think I said I want to learn wide zone, hopped on his thing, and then during the talk, I said outside zone, and he stopped and he goes, "Well, which one are you trying to do? Which one? Because they're different." I'm like, "Oh shit, my bad."
Well, keep doing the one that you're doing.
Yeah, I was like, "Whatever you're doing right now, go 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 go." And then our defense coordinator sometimes does it on film, like, "Okay, they run outside zone." I go, "No, it's wide zone." What? And I'm like, "Just look how they're doing it. It's wide zone." So I became that person. I'm like, "You see what they're doing?" And then I sat back. I was like, "Hey, however you remember it, I don't care. However you remember it does not bother me. Call it whatever you want. You could call that inside zone for all I care."
Yeah, it used to be crazy. I know when I do the Run the Power, the install videos. Like I would have to differentiate it. Like I ended up calling it A gap and B gap zone, just so
Oh.
people would know. And I'm like, again, I go, guys, you call it whatever you want to call it. I'm just saying, I'm just giving you the aiming point of the back.
Mm-hmm.
So he's either going A gap or B gap. And then I did teach or did the install one. It was probably more wide zone, but
Yeah.
again, just telling them, hey, here's the way that we've taught it or whatever. But it's just funny sometimes that people get all caught up and hung up on terminology. It's
Yeah.
like I said, we're all teaching the same stuff. We might just call it something different. Hey, it's
Yeah.
just like you grow up in the north and they call it pop, and you go down someplace else and they're calling it soda.
Oh,
Still the
yeah.
same stuff, or they call it a Coke. Like, no, I want a Mountain Dew. Oh, you want a Coke? Okay, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I mean, it's all fascinating to me. It just leads to more conversation again. Nobody's got to be right. Just can we teach it to our kids? Period.
Right. Because I did the same thing. I think I drew up our inside zone and put it on Twitter one time, and somebody goes, "Well, that's not inside zone, that's mid zone because you're aiming at the center." And I said, "Well, for me, it's inside zone because my running backs over cannot aim for some reason. Every time I tell them to aim for the leg of the guard, we hit the C gap, and I don't want it to, so I have to tell them to
Yep.
aim for the center,
Mm-hmm.
and it's still inside zone because I'm reading the end." And of course, no offense, it was a high school coach, and then I talked to a college coach that does both, and he told me the same. He goes, "Yeah, Steve. I mean, this is mid zone. What you're talking about is more mid zone because of the running back, but the way you're teaching the lineman is inside zone. So who cares? You're teaching inside zone." And I was like,
Yes.
"Thank you. A college coach is smarter than me, and he told me that. Thank you."
Yeah. That is one of the funniest things. Like I mean, offensive line coaches are always, the best. I mean, you love them, but it's just hilarious to see some of them argue about, you know, the different zones, the different gap schemes, the different techniques. It's just amazing how, we might be running what we think are the same plays, but just a little bit, minor tweaks in the way that maybe they were taught or the way they learned it, so it's always funny.
Oh, it's hilarious. And that's why during COVID I got into those arguments because I was bored.
Yeah,
And
we all were, dude. That was a tough time, not gonna lie. I mean,
oh
one of the reasons why we did the podcast again, because we were just bored out of our minds. And then, at the same time, I think everyone was just cooped up, wanting to be out and about. Just crazy times.
oh yeah, I started this February of 2020, then COVID hit, and I was like, oh, there's no sports to talk about. Shoot. And then it got into that right before that summer. And I remember like, screw it. I'm gonna start talking to people. I just couldn't do it no more. And then Coach Banstra has this podcast, and that's how we met. And he goes, I'm too competitive. I can't let you guys do a better podcast than me. And his just shot up. He was doing like 4 a day. And I'm like, you are getting crazy. And that's why his shot up.
Yeah, we were pretty ambitious there for a while. I can't remember. I think we were originally putting out like 2 a week. It's like, dude, I can't do the Joe Rogan style where they're putting one out almost every day. It seems like.
Oh, I know.
You're just like, so after a while, we're like, all right, 1 a week's plenty. And then I think it got to, all right, 2 a month.
Yeah.
Maybe it's like, all right, maybe 1 a month will be good. So
yeah, when things went back to normal, then I started to slow down, and then I find the winter spot like this to do it. Then I'll find the spring spot to do it. Then I try to just cram them out in the summer, and then save them. And then during football, just put out 1 a week. Just be like, here you go, and then try it again.
Yeah, that was always the goal. Hey, put a set number on it. All right, hey, we want to put out 30 this year. Okay, let's make sure we do 30 of them at any time.
Right.
And then if you needed a filler one, Harper and I are like, hey, just be you and me. Let's just talk ball. All right, perfect.
Right.
So yeah, there's so many good podcasts out there now, man. I mean, it's flooded, but there's just so many gems. And again, people would ask me all the time, like, don't you think there's going to be too many or things like no, that's the goal of podcasting should be there should be as many as possible. You want as many people sharing thoughts and interacting and collaborating like that should be the goal. I never looked at it as a competition. We never cared. People would be like, this podcast is out and this one. And like, yeah, I mean, hey, we want to put out a good product, but we were never like worried about, anybody else. Some of our best, collaborations were with guys like Vass, and other dudes that were running podcasts. So, I mean, those are good buddies to this day. And we'd sit on calls and talk about stuff all the time. So, I mean, it was never about that. Podcasting should be about collaborating. It should be about helping other people. It should be about, the sharing of ideas. So ultimately, who benefits? The next generation, our players,
right.
The next generation of coaches. That's why Run the Power continues to live on. We're not making episodes, but I'm still hearing from new coaches. There's a new crop of coaches every year that graduates from college that can't play football anymore. They're looking to transition, that have something to give. That's ultimately what this whole thing is about, man. The whole pay it forward movement. Dude, that's why we did it.
Right. No, that sums it up right there. Coach, I appreciate you coming on. Appreciate your time. Hopefully you had some fond memories of being on Zoom.
Absolutely. I had to dust off I still got the headset. My wife saw me grabbing the headset. She's like, really? You're doing one? I'm like, yeah, I had to dust it off. It still works. The original one that I bought, like Harp's like, you have to get a headset and a mic or whatever. I never did go with the Blue Yetis or whatever. I never got one. I literally still have the same Logitech. It's like a gamer's headset that I'm still rocking.
I know it sounds great. I have this fancy thing, but yours still sounds great.
So I said it was $25. Still works fine. The only thing that's busted on it is the mute button. So it did have a mute button on the side. That's the only thing that's broke on it, and the light. Other than that, game on.
There you go. That's all you need.
It is, man. Keep it simple. Just like Run the Power, right?
Run the Power. You got to keep it simple, right? Be simple, stupid. Or stupid, simple. I always mix it up. Just
block down, kick out. You got to have somebody cleaning it up, kick everything out. Keep it in A gap, baby.
Well, I was going to say, I always tell kids, I don't know if it's the A gap. It might be B gap. I'm just saying.
Yeah. A gap path could turn into B gap. Yeah, dude, it's
brilliant.
there's nothing better though than seeing a perfectly blocked power. I'm sorry. As an offensive line guy.
Oh, well, I guess this can help you end it. Earlier, when you said, oh, line coaches don't have to admit they keep it to themselves about gap schemes, I was that person where I loved zone, but part of me is like, oh, look at this counter, look at this power. It looks beautiful. Let's run that. Let's run that again. And or power read this year. Power read was beautiful. And so it's just or play action off power. Beautiful.
Yes. Full back in the flat.
We do that or the pop pass, just straight up or straight up, just run a hitch. Boom, here you go. Just take it. Well, Coach, I appreciate you being on here. Thank you so much.
Absolutely, dude. Been a blast.